Ghana, we have one of the growing ecosystem where startups are doing well, but there are no legal backings to support some of these startups for them to be able to scale and grow and sustain as well. So there is the need for Ghana to have a law that would categorically look into setting up legislation frameworks and incentives that would benefit startups, that would ensure that we attract investment into our startup, that will give startup the leeway to be able to grow.
Within the last 10 years, there has been a tremendous growth in the Ghana startup ecosystem. If you look at the entire African of the south of the Sahara, in the sub-region, Ghana today is among the top 10 growing startup ecosystems that you can find within the sub-region. Even from the way startups have been innovative, we've seen a tremendous progress from the position of 137 on the Global Innovation Index to 95th position. This shows that something is happening in Ghana, and it's time for us to pay attention to the startups that are in the country who can change the landscape of Ghana's economy.
Startups face a lot of challenges, and notably access to funding. We've also identified other challenges, especially when it comes to regulatory compliance. The long process and delays involved in getting their products certified by the standard authorities and the FDAs. Because if the products are not certified by FDA and standard boards and co, they are not able to sell at the various institutions that need their products. And so they will always have access to limited markets. And then talent acquisition. Startups, one or two people coming together, establishing a business, do not have all the prerequisite knowledge required to run the business. And so they need to employ. And because of the high cost involved in employing expert and senior people to help them, they are also facing challenge with human resource and then the talent in general.
Most of the materials that we use in our industry has to be imported, mostly from China and other parts of the world. And the major hurdle is the import duties and taxes. Most of the components that we use are heavily taxed, and for that matter, when you finish your product, the product ends up being too expensive. And then competing with other industry players that have a lot of resources to be able to, deliver, makes it a bit difficult for the local industries to compete with them. Well, I think the regulatory environment in Ghana currently doesn't really favor the startups. For instance, let me take the Energy Commission. One of the regulations is that for a solar installation company, you need to have a license. And this license is pegged at 5,000 cedis for everyone, large or small. And you have to know that for someone who is starting that doesn't have any capital, for instance, it will become very difficult for the person to get such a cap amount to go and do that.
We need to have very, very intentional policies that target startups where taxation is concerned. Flat taxation, smart taxation, taxation that is designed for each business needs. And it should be easy to access. And there should be an agency mandated by law preparing these materials and making them free and being an advocate for startups and demystifying the concept of running a successful business. And I believe that is what we need to really drive our country forward to become like the developed nations that we so yearn to be.
And this is why 5 years ago, the desire for us to have a startup bill.
The Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill project is a private sector and government initiative where we come together to co-create a legislation that will support startups. The objectives are quite simple. Set up a law that first of all would promote talent in Ghana, that would attract investment into Ghanaian startup and also give certain support to startup. Ghana do not have any statutory definition for what a startup is. So one key objective of this bill when passed into law is that it's going to define who a Ghanaian startup is. So the journey of the Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill started earlier on by different ecosystem actors in their various environment trying to bring up discussions around it. But officially in 2020, where we got into partnership with GRZ Make IT, that the whole work started together with the Ministry of Business Development and the implementing agency, which is the NEIP. Our task was to pick the zero draft that By then, the GCY committee had worked on to engage stakeholders to then develop it so that it will be more inclusive.
A lot of engagement have been done at the highest national level, at the regional levels, at the district level, at the ecosystem partnership level, at the innovators and the startups level. All these engagements have been done to have the buy-in of the various key stakeholders that concerns itself with the bill.
We will say that we have the final draft of the bill, but that can still be subjected to changes when it gets to Parliament and when other stakeholders are part of it.
The current Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill that we're working towards, hopefully when it becomes law, one of the key aspects is it seeks to establish what we call the Ghana Innovation Agency. Really, the essence of it is that this agency would be mandated to operationalize the law that we passed by Parliament. And part of the operationalization is the agency will be responsible for ensuring that whatever giveaways there are for startups and young entrepreneurs, as well as potential investors who would come in and want to invest in our startup businesses, it will spell out clearly the rules of engagement. Also, even things like having a Ghana Innovation Fund, a fund that would help propel innovators into the marketplace. Currently, there are many innovators out there, but even the little funds they need to be able to get off their ground and off their feet is very difficult to come by. And this agency will be responsible for ensuring that at least those who are due funding support will also get a funding support.
In the bill, we're defining startups to be tech-savvy business, like tech-focused, tech-enabled business. But then to the large extent, when we change the name from startups to Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill, we're also looking at the innovation coming in as a broad. And so what we're trying to say is that you need to have a startup label, right? You must apply for the label. And the label can only be given to you when you meet certain requirements, right? First and foremost, your business must not be more than 10 years old. You must have a certain amount of revenue being generated. You must have a certain number of employers, among other things that we put together. When you're given a label, the label is with you for 8 years, right? And so you need to work within that 8 years before the label will be drawn for you. And that is the key aspect for me that I'm excited about, that startups are able to hold a license, sort of, to go out there and secure support that they need to make their businesses work. Issue of taxes are huge on our necks. But if you know that once I have this license, in terms of a label, I can apply for a tax holiday or a tax waiver that qualifies me for 8 years or something. That is a plus.
I'm really excited about the tax exemptions in this bill because, as many young entrepreneurs know and businesses today, it's really a difficult time in our economy. Now, some will argue that this is the time that the government needs tax revenue the most. We don't disagree. However, this is also the time that private sector, which is the engine of growth, also needs a little bit of a break. What I see amongst other small businesses, myself and our peers, is that so many of us are just trying to make it to break even or get to a point where revenue is consistent. And while we want to continue to pay tax, those burdens are sometimes a little too much when you're not even making a profit yet. And so what we are asking that the government consider is a graded system where startups, depending on where you are, say pre-revenue, in revenue stage or growth stage, receive some sort of tax incentives.
The Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill, when passed into an act, will provide an incentive framework that will address the numerous challenges faced by startups in Ghana. One of such issues is talent acquisition. The Act would seek to provide human capital to these startups to work with. Another issue faced by early stage startups is the issue of talent retention. The bill will seek to create an agency that would consistently train and retrain the human capital assigned to these startups. In addition, the bill would ensure that stipends are paid to these talents to ensure that it relieves the early stage startups of the financial burden. That is all.
The Startup and Innovation Bill is very dear to the heart of the Ghana Hubs Network because we've been part of the technical working committee for some time since its inception. There are two things that are primarily very important for us. The first is access to market. So the access to market is to afford startups the opportunity to gain access to critical markets. For instance, the supply chain of government, for instance. And when we are talking about access, we are talking about also inclusivity. And so this access to startups, we are negotiating through the bill to have about 20% of government procurement being set aside for startups, for Ghanaian startups. And these are startups that would have gone through market creating innovations. And so they are disruptors. They are startups that would have products and services that would be in need by this procurement. And so about 20% of that will be set aside, and a part of that will be set aside for women-led businesses and also the physically challenged as well.
One of the most exciting aspects of the bill for me is the area of insolvency. It can help with the restructuring of debts, and it doesn't mean it necessarily entrepreneurs don't have to go through the stages of liquidation, and they don't need to carry a lot of risk. So for me, this particular provision is most exciting to me.
Our leading partner has been the GIZ, where the GIZ Make IT project supported us in our early stages of stakeholder engagement, and later came in another project of GIZ called the GIZ Agri-Biz that supported another aspect. Along the line, we had the SMV and their Green project that is sponsored by the European Union coming in as well to sponsor part of our regional engagement. We also had the ITC come in later part to support most of our engagement, and then we had the World Bank that has also come in, and at the moment we are working to get the support from the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization to ensure we finalize. We have enjoyed a lot of good partnership from these people. Most of them come in the form of technical support, in the form of expertise, and sometimes in the form of funding from all of these partners.
At GIZ, innovation is a huge part of our work. We try to incorporate it in every level of our work. And most of the countries that we work in, innovation is at the core of it. And it's because we believe in the power of innovation. Innovation can help drive and propel economies forward and bring about economic development, and we believe strongly in that. So since 2019, we've been working with local actors around the innovation ecosystem, directly supporting startups, supporting innovation hubs, but also concerning ourselves with policy. And so we're very happy to have supported in the starting of the Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill. We're very happy for all the progress that we've seen so far, getting it to this draft stage, and it's looking positive going forward. But we just believe that this policy or this bill, when it becomes an act, would help to support startups to be able to deploy their solutions, to be able to provide value at different levels, and to ensure that many of the challenges that we are having locally here in Ghana would be solved through that.
ITC has been supporting the development of the Ghana Startup and Innovation Bill. This bill aims to build a better enabling environment for entrepreneurship and innovation in Ghana, and is really a key stepping stone to develop Ghana's startup ecosystem and economy further. Since NTFI focuses on supporting the growth of tech startups and also drives systemic change, this initiative was an important one to help develop for us. A Startup Act is crucial for countries like Ghana because it creates a legal framework that encourages innovation, supports entrepreneurship, and drives economic growth. By implementing policies that reduce barriers for startups, it can stimulate job creation, attract investment, and promote sustainable development. So examples from other African countries like Tunisia and Senegal, this demonstrates how effective these acts can be. For example, as you may know, Tunisia was the first African country to implement a Startup Act in 2018, and its success has been really notable. So the law created a favorable environment by offering tax exemptions, access to funding, and simplified administrative processes. And as a result, over 700 startups have been labeled as startups under the Act, which has led to increased foreign investment and also boosted Tunisia's innovative ecosystem. Thank you to everyone that is contributing to this amazing journey, and let's continue pushing forward to make the Ghana Startup Act a reality.
We are very excited about Startup Bill because we are going to host it, and we are playing our part to ensure that on the government side, everything that is needed to provide the act is brought on board. And at the ministerial level, through government, through the Ministry of Communication, is providing funding of about $1 million to ensure that all the resources needed for our roadshows and all activities towards the passage of the Act, from the Act moving from the Ministry to Cabinet and back to Parliament and then to the Presidency for assent, is achieved. We are grateful to all our stakeholders for the commitment they have shown so far, and we believe that if we all continue to show such level of seriousness, very soon we'll get the Act passed and it will help to build our startup ecosystem.
If Startup Bill generally is not a good thing, why do we have other African countries adopting it, supporting their startup? The Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill is not a political thing, it's an economic need, it's a necessity to ensure that Ghana's economy is growing by the contribution of our startup. Let us see this project as a project for national development, as a project for economic revolution. Ghana needs the Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill, and there is no better time to pass it than now.
So join us as we make a final push for the Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill passed into an Act of Parliament, and to ensure that it's helping us in our economic development as a country.
I'm calling out all stakeholders, citizens alike, and enthusiasts, tech enthusiasts, startups, lawmakers, policymakers, development partners, private sector, academia, industry, that we should all join hands and push for this Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill to become a law. It's a law that is needed for our ecosystem, and I entreat all of us to support this. Once it comes to Parliament and there is a discussion on it, we should all add our voices and our strength to it to ensure that it becomes a law for our ecosystem. Thank you.
The Ghana Innovation and Startup Bill, when passed into an act, will transform the startup ecosystem in Ghana. In view of this, I call on all relevant stakeholders, including government, private sector, academia, civil society, and startups, to support the passage of this bill into an act.
I also want to call on all young entrepreneurs across the country to join in this advocacy to encourage government to pass this bill into an act.
Calling on all of us, our government, policymakers, entrepreneurs, businesses, all of us innovators, to support the passage of the Ghana Startup and Innovation Bill. We believe that this bill will be a step forward in making sure that our startups are positioned to contribute meaningfully to our economy.
I want to call on everybody, every Ghanaian, to come on board, support this bill, which is needed to support young people who are doing their own businesses to be able to scale beyond borders.
I invite you to join hands and forces with us as we all work together to see to the passing of the Startup Bill into an act.
IWH Kobina Dumas Longden and of course Tech Farm Hub believe that the Startup and Innovation Bill is a necessity. It is time that the conferences, the workshops and the discussions that we've had over the years translate into a bill that will help to actually transform the fortunes of startups within this ecosystem. We believe once we do this, we are going to open a new level of opportunities. We are going to empower a new level of people who are young people out there who are looking for opportunities to make impact for themselves, improve their own livelihoods, and of course also translate into the people who are their dependents. We want to therefore encourage every stakeholder, government and private sector, to take opportunity this one-time opportunity help transform the face of our ecosystem and help support our startups to begin to make transformational impact and sustainable ones for that matter going forward.
We have a lot of youth unemployed. And so for youth to venture into innovation and come up with startups, if they are supported, they are going to create jobs for others. And it will collectively help to reduce the high rate of youth unemployment. So this bill needs to be passed and provided the necessary support to the startups to help them to create more jobs to solve the unemployment situation.
I want to say a very big thank you to all our partners, GIZ, to the World Bank, to the ITC International Trade Center, to the SMVA, the European Union, and to all other partners who are yet to come on board. We are welcoming you on board. It could be technical support. It could be anything that you can contribute. It could be even using your influence to get this bill passed. We need all of you. We need every Ghanaian that this is the time we also do something deliberately to support startups in Ghana. Thank you very much.
We call on stakeholders to pass the startup bill for economic development and for startups to thrive.